Hello, I'm Kerry Bannigan, and I'm the founder of the Conscious Fashion Campaign in collaboration with the United Nations Office for Partnerships. I am joined by three leading industry experts who will today share their perspectives on how the denim industry can further support climate action and environmental sustainability. Welcome all, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you
Starting
for
with you.
having us. Very.
Absolutely. Starting with you, Alina, please introduce yourself and highlight your organization's approach to environmental sustainability, and also share with the audience where you're dialing in from.
Sure. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having us. So my name is Elina Brinkberg, and I'm the environmental manager at Nudies. And Nudies is based in Sweden, and right now I'm sitting in Gothenburg in my kitchen. And well, Nudies have been working in a sustainable way for quite many years. It was one of the reasons for Maria, one of our founders, to actually start the company. She wanted to make a product and to have a business where she could really follow her dreams of making sustainable garments. So we have been working with organic cotton in all of our denim since 2012 and in all of our other cotton products since 2017. And we're working with a strict chemical policy and RSL, so a restricted substance list, but we're also working with a very transparent supply chain. So we're very much focusing on having a long-term collaborations with our suppliers. And this means that we know exactly where our garments are made. We know the subcontractors that are used. And we, well, in normal times, when it's not a pandemic, we also travel a lot to our suppliers to visit them at least once a year is our goal. And when we are visiting the suppliers, we make sure to make a full factory visit. We inspect the chemical storage, the water treatment plants, and so on. But we are also, of course, making follow-ups on the latest social audits that has been made, where we, for example, discuss wage levels or overtime work, in addition to all of the environmental aspects that we're also looking at. And we're also working to prolong the life of our garments in different ways. So we offer free repair service in all of our repair shops and through our repair partners. We're also collecting old nudie jeans in our stores. So we offer a 20% discount on a pair of jeans when the customer turn in an old pair of nudie jeans that they don't want any longer. So we sell secondhand jeans, and we also reuse and recycle nudie jeans in different ways. So we try to see the full picture when it comes to sustainability.
Thank you so much for that. And I know we'll dive in a little bit later into more of those different levels that are going on there, and especially through the supply chain. Khalid, I'd like to turn the floor over to you. Please introduce yourself and also your organization's approach to environmental sustainability.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me as well. My name is Halit from Kipaş Textiles. We are located in Turkey. Kipaş Textiles is the largest vertical textile company in Europe. And we are producing from spinning to finished fabrics, including denim and many different types of non-denim fabrics. Kipaş was established 36 years ago, and being respectful to our nature is kind of our history. We became one of the pioneers when BCI cotton and organic cotton consumption, raw material consumption started. And then it followed with recycled polyesters and recycled cotton productions. We regenerate, we reuse all the fabrics or garments wasted, and we return it as a new yarn and new fabrics, and we give a new life to the waste in our production. So we are trying to be kind of pioneer in our business segment, and I hope we can share more further.
Thank you very much. Look forward to learning more. And Sanjeev.
Yeah, hi. Well, my name is Sanjeev Bal, and like Alina, I'm talking to you from my little kitchen in Los Angeles. I've been extremely fortunate to have been the very first employee at Cytex, uh, over 20 years ago. And over the years, I've just grown in the ranks to a point where they have given me a title of a chief cook and a bottle washer, a title that I enjoy thoroughly. It's something that wakes me up every day in the morning and go to work. So here I am.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to learning more about Cytex as we go into this conversation. So back to you, Helena. As a garment flows through the supply chain, it may touch many different hands before reaching the final consumer. And you delved into a little bit of this on how you work through this process in your introduction. But in this process, whose responsibility is it to ensure sustainability isn't compromised?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really think it's a shared responsibility, but I also think that we as brand have a lot of more responsibility to take. It is as it looks today in general in the industry. But I also think that to be able to truly take responsibility, we need to again, I want to focus a lot on this building the relationships with the suppliers, because if we're going to take responsibility for how it looks in the factories and for where we place the production of our garments, we really need to know how it looks in the supply chain. We need to work long term with the suppliers to get to know each other and to build a relationship based on trust, to be able to discuss sensitive subjects if that is necessary. We need to trust our suppliers to bring up issues if there are any, and we need our suppliers to trust us, that we are not just leaving them and finding another supplier, but staying on and trying to solve the issues together. So we really believe in collaborating with our suppliers and to have an open discussion with them to be able to take responsibility. But I also think, of course, it's necessary for us as a brand to have a good production planning. So we have reasonable deadlines, for example, to not create overtime work in the factories. We need to pay a reasonable price for our products to enable the factories and the suppliers to actually work with high quality technologies, and of course to offer their employees good working conditions. So I think in the end that we have a large responsibility to take and to implement and policies and all of this, but also to create this relationship with the suppliers where we can actually collaborate and work together to really succeed in having a sustainable production.
Thank you so much for that. And moving over to you, Halit, from your experience, what are the factors holding back other denim manufacturers from prioritizing sustainability?
Actually, it is very important to define what is sustainable production, because when we mention about sustainable production, we generally understand that it is made of organic cotton, or it's just made of sustainable raw material. These kind of things are coming up. But like Elena's explained, it is not only that aspect. There are much more than that. This is a very deep issue. And in terms of raw material side, you can it is not big difficulty, but or in terms of social criteria, it also can be managed by a responsible company. However, denim production is something very unique because you need to consume so much water, and you are dealing with chemicals and dyestuffs which pollutes the world significantly, and it is not easy to deal with. So you need to make more than just using or just organizing. You need to be focused on every processes of the production. You need to take care of how we can make processes consuming less water, or how we can use new technologies who consumes less, or the waste we are polluting, how we can reuse this waste, or how we can make this treated much efficiently. I mean, there are much more questions like this, and these are not easy questions. There are very detailed things, and for sure, carbon emission. It is another significant issue for textile production, because we are generating lots of carbon dioxide, and we have to also consider this. It is not easy. That's my point. I think for making other denim manufacturers a little bit slow on this, but this is I think textile industry like a big family, and everybody shares their experience, and we learn from each other, and we are getting better every day, I think.
That's fantastic. And I also think that about the denim sector, especially what you see with Kingpins. It's a family that is learning its findings, its research, even the failures. So how you can keep moving forward on R&D. And you're so right about the complexity of sustainability and the definition. So thank you for that input. Sanjeev, can you share with us what has been Cytec's experience with the business case for environmental sustainability? Sanjeev, you're on mute.
In the quest of being respectable, I was not being mindful, so I do apologize.
Not at all.
Well, yeah, so I would say, our quest has always been to build a very responsible business. And, when you talk about responsibility, I think you have to look at it in a three-dimensional focus. So the first element of the responsibility comes into fiscal responsibility, because if you're not profitable, there's no way that you can have allocation of resources towards creating positive social and environmental impact. So, well, our journey, I would say, really took a turn for the positive about 15 years ago. And ever since, we have just been mindful and judicious to create positive impact, again, on all three fronts. So when we talk about economic prosperity, I think the conversation needs to be had beyond a white picket fence. So it means economic prosperity, not just for the enterprise, but for the planet at large, as well as the people who live outside a white picket fence. So over the years, I would say the business case has to be proven, and it's a journey. So we started our journey first with trying to prove the hypothesis that we have to look beyond conserving water and energy. So it took us 6 to 7 years to mature our strategy and our financial investments. So we kind of broke even in 6 to 7 years, and that was the first switch that got turned on to accelerate light into the future. Now, it's interesting where we are when you talk about economic prosperity. Fast forward, to 2021, we live in a new system, a system called intersectional environmentalism. So now these three dimensions are coming together, colliding together, converging together, where every single action and decision from our side would have equal impact three-dimensionally. So let me just make it simple and give you 2 examples. So we just finished planting 50 hectares of a mangrove forest down the Mekong Delta coastline in partnership with the NGO. Now this coastline is not 50 hectares, right? It's thousands of hectares, but this is the first step towards preventing soil erosion, degradation of the topography, which will have over the long term direct impact on habitat as well as humans. Now, counterbalancing that, mangrove forests are great carbon capturers. I'm not saying it's a carbon sink, but that directly helps, in reducing the impact on climate change. So this is one example, right, where one decision have 2 or 3 different positive impacts at one time. The second one, which is my personal passion, is inclusivity. So while we talk about, creating an inclusive program that surrounds a conversation more towards race, color, size, and everything else that we've seen in 2020 that's escalated this conversation, what we must be mindful of and understand truly that inclusivity goes well beyond what we talk about today. So 1.5 billion people on this planet have different abilities, and we don't talk about them. We do not have infrastructure, governmental programs to give them equal pay, equal respect, and dignity. Now, what we've done is to extend the boundaries of the existing conversations by setting up a factory in Vietnam for people with special needs. So today we have 100 young adults who participate with equal pay, respect, and dignity. And this program will grow. We've committed to having 1,000 young adults, part of a mainstream manufacturing system. So again, I think economic prosperity is a very big word. And I think, you need to use business as a tool that can emerge as a force for good, for a common, economic prosperity for all.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And that second example is absolutely incredible. And it's brilliant to be able to see how business can be done for good and tackling what means something to each organization. And I think what you're doing there in this factory is only the beginning of what can happen for manufacturing as role models. So thank you so much for sharing that. Alina, what advice do you have for brands who are in the process of picking their suppliers? I know this is a complex question, and I know this is a short conversation between us all, but if you could give any advice to the audience and people that are in need of this help, could you pick maybe top 3 things you could share?
Yeah, sure. I would circle back again to this long-term relationship. So I would definitely, if we are looking for new suppliers, we are looking for suppliers that we see the possibility of working long-term with, that we could develop together with. And of course, suppliers that are open and transparent about their full supply chain, because that is a requirement that we have. We need to know all the suppliers in the supply chain. So I think that's very important. But also, of course, to pick suppliers that are themselves engaged and have a strong sustainability values, because we can never force our suppliers to improve or to engage in these kind of questions. It has to be something that each supplier wants for themselves. And together we can support and develop together in the right direction. So I think that's super important. And more practical tips would be to perhaps ask for previously made audit reports, or to see if the factories are certified according to any standards, such as SCOTS or any ISO standards, for example. And I think it also can be a good idea to actually see what other brands are working with the suppliers. Are there other brands working with strong sustainability values and high quality products? And do you see yourself as the brand looking for suppliers to be able to communicate with these other brands, or perhaps collaborate around different sustainability issues? That is always important, and a good strategy to actually see changes at the supplier level. If the brands can communicate and put similar requirements on the suppliers, it's easier for the suppliers, and it's easier for us to have a bigger leverage toward the suppliers. So seeing collaborations, possibilities, and of course, really make sure that the supplier is engaged in these kind of questions. I think that's super important.
Thank you so much for that. And I know as people are watching, they're like, and more, but there's a lot to address and consider. So thank you for that. Now, Harlan, I'd like to go back to how you had shared earlier different things that the sector needs to consider when they're looking to address sustainability. You gave us already quite a few that we know the sector has to consider and address, and we know the list continues on from there. But could you share with us just what your organization did to overcome some of the barriers to address sustainability, and how can we support other manufacturers to do the same?
Yeah, actually, sharing the experience and avoiding these barriers are very important, because it is not only an issue that manufacturers can deal with, because there are some issues governments needs to make some changes, and the process flow needs to change. So it is a kind of collaboration for every step of the chain. For example, in terms of reusing the wastes, pre-consumer wastes or post-consumer wastes, we need to work with all participants, like garment manufacturer, for example. They need to collect, and they need to organize their companies, their garment makers, or their stores, to separate and to send it, to organize to reusing. And it is not easy to import from other countries to everywhere, and the regulations needs to be changed. So all industry, all manufacturers needs to work together to solve these situations with government. We need to explain it, and we need to change it. Some manufacturers may not know about this, may not have information, may not aware of this kind of trend. And in this situation, we have platforms that we can share our experiences. We are organizing an event in Istanbul. We organized an event in Istanbul 2 years ago. Unfortunately, last year, because of pandemic, we couldn't make it. We call it Sustainability Talks. We share our experiences as manufacturers. Everybody from the industry, we didn't care about if we are competitor or not. We shared our all experiences, and we tried to understand what are the difficulties and what are the solutions for these difficulties. And this way, we improve our know-how, and we achieve to handle these barriers.
Thank you for that. And it's so important that two things you highlighted there was the knowledge share. And I also want to thank you for highlighting the importance for all sectors, but specifically here today, the denim industry, to push aside competitive mindset and move towards that collaborative. So thank you so much for that. So Sanjeev, I have one last question before giving you all a question as a group here, as we start to wrap up this session. But Sanjeev, do you believe the denim industry is making progress towards addressing environmental harm? And where do you think some of the significant challenges continue to exist?
Well, I'd like to address this slightly differently. I think there are 4 buckets or constraints that govern rapid change. So the first, I would say, is the migratory nature of a business, blended with geopolitical situations. Mm-hmm. Now, over a period in time, what has happened is there's been very less stability. You know, as an industry, it's been a top-down situation where brands have walked away from productivity, but they've looked more at production, and production is nothing else but cost. So they've gone for the least common denominator, and it's imploded what I call the migratory nature of the business, because the next best place could be 10 cents cheaper, right? That does not augur well for long-term capex. Now, when you talk about long-term capex, the availability of long-term capex is a huge constraint, because banks still have not understood what positive impact has to businesses. So the interest rates that banks govern are not proportionate to people making long-term investments either, right? So there's no mechanism of impact investors. In the tech industry, you have, people with small ideas who get big money. And here, in the textile business, people have big ideas, right? And an emerging crisis, but there's no money. So I think capital plays a huge role in accelerating change. And lastly, I think a critical factor is what I call the human behavioral aspect. As human beings, we've got conditioned to the 10 commandments. We've got conditioned to traffic lights. So because of a traffic light, you behave. I mean, you have a behavioral pattern, right? And if you jump that light, there is a check and balance with somebody who could probably just give you a ticket, right? Now, the current state of affairs is that there's no uniform, I call it uniform legislation globally, that would govern human behavior, right? And hold us accountable. Now, when you talk about accountability, you look at, what a deep-rooted positive impact, unfortunately, but it has had on businesses and people when carbon tax has been imposed, right? It alters behavior. So I think if you really look at an industry, it's not just denim. I mean, it's denim is not the only one that has created the negative impacts on climate change while we keep on talking about it. But as an overall situation, I think legislation is super critical for it to form over the years to govern human behavior, which will just accelerate positive change.
So true, and thank you for that. I'm a big believer that we need this governance, this legislation, and this policy, because right now we're all operating in a very unaccountable industry.
Correct.
So thank
Exactly.
you for that. Now, just one question to you all to wrap up, and Alina, I would love you to start. As we look to the future, what change would you like to see in the fashion industry and denim in particular, as we come to prioritizing better support for climate action?
Well, I truly think that we need to see a quicker change to renewable energy within the supply chain, to change from fossil-based fuel and fossil-based energy. I think that is the first and most important thing that we can do to decrease the climate impact of the textile industry. And I also think that we need to see an increased recycling industry. We need to recycle more. We can't just use recycled fibers as an input. We also need to think about the recyclability of the actual product that we are creating. And by doing this, of course, we can use less virgin fibers and materials. And I also think we need to dare to start to think about moving away from the global overproduction that is existing today, and we need to make fewer and more high quality products that people use for a longer time. We need to reach that point because we are producing so much today and using so much resources that in the end, maybe someone is using for a month or two and then throw away. So we need to use our garments longer and to produce them in a more sustainable way.
Thank you very much. I see nodding heads. Khaled, anything to add?
Actually, I liked so much Alina's comments. Definitely, I agree 100%. Actually, there is a challenge. We are always playing. We are making always growing plan. We are always trying to produce more and becoming a larger industry as a textile world, but it is reality that if we cannot consume responsibly, the real sustainability, real sustainable understanding will not happen. So it is a challenge. And I also agree about recycling. I mean, currently we are not able to reuse most of the blends. I mean, when there is a complicated blend, when there is lycra in it, when there is polyester and cotton blended, so kind of things, it is very difficult to reuse it as a new fiber. There are luckily there are some technologies, there are some startup companies, they are doing very good things. I hope they will become more successful, and we can use more reused raw material instead of virgin ones. And I hope this trend will not be just a fashion trend. It will change. It will convert whole industry and people in the world.
Thank you. And Sanjeev, any wise words to end on?
Oh, Lord, you're putting me on the spot, the wiseness index. But anyway, I'll take a crack at it. So yeah, of course, everything that Alina and Khalid have said, I fully subscribe to. I mean, philosophically, I would look at it more like where Charles Darwin led us, I mean, that whole theory of evolution of mankind. So if you really look at that whole evolution, I would say where we are as an industry, or on that, on the responsibility factor, we're like somewhere in the middle, right? Now, our brain is nothing but a neural network. And it's the most amazing tool that a human body has. And it's progressed over a period in time. And the formation of this neural network is extending into connected technology. So why I'm saying that is, if you really look at the ecosystem or the neural network in our business, it's relegated into a small little lane called tiers. So you've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. But these tiers are so disconnected. It's all over the place. So we need to, it will emerge, right? And that's why I said we are in the middle on Darwin's theory of change, right? So the connectivity of these tiers would form over the years a very powerful neural network. Now, again, where I left off the last time, legislation is going to be one of those drivers, but that's not the only driver. What I'm really enjoying right now is the emergence of an ecosystem. So the ecosystem that's emerging has emerged recently from catalysts like watchdogs, like Greenpeace and NRDC on one side, technology like the Higg Index, which allows you to benchmark and rate, how you're conducting a business. You live in a world of certifications, but one that stands out is the B Corp, that allows you to guide your actions to create social, environmental, and of course positive fiscal impact. And then there are, there's a system that's forming with actors and players like the UN with their Sustainable Development Goals, which also conform to conversations that we've had since the Tokyo Protocol, which has also emerged into the Paris Agreement. So these are I call them widgets, which are just swirling in this in the orbit, and this is an ecosystem that's emerging. Now it's just a matter of time, and maybe I think the glue and the fix is legislation. Once legislation comes in, there's going to be massive adoption of all this emerging ecosystems. And once that happens, I think there'll be massive transformation over the next 20 years. So, like I said, we are somewhere halfway through the theory of evolution, and I'll be super happy to still, in my living years, to experience this whole neural network coming together. So I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic at the same time.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you to all three of you, and for the audience for joining us. It has been great to learn and hear about each of your perspectives on how the denim industry can further support climate action and environmental sustainability. So thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. We appreciate it. Thank you.